Not long ago, Ulta Beauty's digital business was a fraction of what it is today. Then Michelle Pacynski stepped in, building teams, launching bold innovations, and creating a $20 million venture fund to bring startups into the mix.
She didn't just ride the wave of retail transformation. She helped shape it, weaving AI, AR, and XR into the shopping journey, redefining omnichannel.
Now Michelle's making bold predictions about the future of retail, and trust me, they'll make you rethink everything you thought you knew about search, e-commerce, and innovation. Welcome to the Season 2 premiere of the Retail Razor Retail Transformers podcast, part of the #1 indie podcast network for retail, a top 20 retail management show on Apple Podcasts, the #1 indie careers podcast of the week and month on Good Pods, and a 2025 instant hit on Spotify, where this show's more popular than 52% of other new shows debuting in 2025. This is the show where we bring you candid conversations with the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the bold thinkers, and the disruptors that see things differently to shape the future of retail.
And I'm Casey Golden. Welcome, Retail Razor fans. If you're passionate about innovation, leadership, and the future of commerce, Retail Transformers is the podcast for you. And wow, do we have an amazing episode to kick off the season.
Yes, we do. Today, Casey and I are thrilled to sit down with one of the most visionary leaders in retail innovation, Michelle Pacynski. And if you're not familiar with Michelle, just keep listening. You're in for a string of aha moments.
Michelle is a senior digital executive, futurist, and strategic advisor who's been reshaping the way we shop for more than 2 decades. At Ulta Beauty, she helped scale the digital business from $125 million to over $2 billion in revenue, leading the charge on omnichannel transformation and creating experiences that connect the digital and physical worlds.
She also founded Prisma Ventures, Ulta's $20 million corporate venture fund, where she deployed more than half of that capital into early-stage startups, accelerating innovation across AI, AR, XR, and beyond. Today, she continues to guide founders through her own firm, iVantage Advisors, helping startups navigate growth and achieve product market fit.
Michelle's impact has been recognized across the industry. She's been named one of Commerce Next's top 25 leaders to watch in 2025, honored by Brand Innovators and Glossy for her work in omnichannel and emerging technology, and awarded Retail Partner of the Year by Vendors in Partnership. She's also a member of Rethink Retail's Global Retail Leaders Advisory, shaping the future trajectory of the industry.
She's not just a leader, she's a true collaborator and thought partner, regularly speaking at conferences, joining panels, and sharing insights on podcasts. Today, we'll dive into her journey, her bold predictions for the future of retail, and the advice she has for both brands and founders navigating transformation.
But before we dive in, a quick ask for all of you listening and watching. If you're enjoying the show, and if you came back for season 2, then you got to be enjoying it. So why not hit us with a 5-star rating or a 4? There's always room for improvement. Drop a short review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Good Pods, or wherever you're listening.
And like and subscribe on our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. And if you haven't already, take a few minutes to check out and subscribe to the other shows in the Retail Razor Podcast Network, The Retail Razor Show, Blade to Greatness, and Data Blades. You'll find them all in your favorite podcast app and on our YouTube channel.
All right, with that said, let's jump into our incredible conversation with our latest retail transformer, Michelle Pacynski.
Michelle, welcome to the Retail Transformers podcast. I'm always excited when we have someone on the show with such a rich retail career, leading, driving innovation, both large brands as well as working with startups. I honestly can't wait to dive into your retail journey, leadership philosophy, and all the amazing things that you've been doing.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I'm really super excited to be here and can't wait to get chatting.
Right? Thrilled to have you here today with us. You've led innovation, the creation of a startup fund, and for so many years led the digital evolution in e-commerce of some pretty well-established retail brands. So let's just jump in and have you give our audience a quick rundown of your background.
Fabulous. So most recently, I was with Ulta Beauty. I was with Ulta Beauty for about close to 13 years. Left Ulta Beauty at the beginning of 2025 to kind of hang out in the startup community more so. But I have been in retail for a bit. And at Ulta, I had two roles. Part of the first half of my time at Ulta, I led consumer technology. And that would be store systems marketing, digital channels, our mobile apps. Focused on that for about half of my time at Ulta. And then the other half, I founded and led a digital innovation team. Prior to Ulta, I was the CIO for a home furnishings retailer and, a number of other retailers before that. But for the most part, much of my career has been technology centric. I'm a technologist at heart, old math major, and I have I really leveraged technology across all disciplines of the business. But in the past, I would say good 15 years or so, the focus has really been applying technology for guest or customer-centric experiences.
Okay, great. That's what we love to hear. So let's dive in a little bit more into your time at Ulta. I find so much of what you did there to be fascinating. I remember from some of our previous discussion, I think in terms of Ulta's digital business, when you first took on those roles, it was somewhere around 125 million. I think that obviously grew to well over 2 billion in revenue. If you look back on that, what would you consider some of the more pivotal transformation decisions that kind of fueled the growth you were able to create with that? And any particular lessons that other retailers can take from that?
Mm-hmm. A couple of things. I would say, I think in 2012, when I joined Ulta and I was brought in by friends of mine who I'd worked with previously, the focus was on digital and growing the channel to the target was 10% of total revenue. It really wasn't where it needed to be. And, in 2012, one of the things that was really great about Ulta, still true today, is it's very entrepreneurial. But in 2012, the digital channels were very immature for the size company that it was at the time. Mm-hmm. So you really had an opportunity to make a difference, be very self-sufficient, move quickly. And, for the most part, we had the ability to do what we needed to do to grow the channel, a number of us that kind of came in at that time. And so a couple of things that we immediately focused on. One, the overall infrastructure of a digital channel, I think you really can't ignore. So one of the things I really spent a lot of time on was just the physical infrastructure. And by that, I mean network layers and ensuring that they were configured to really support aggressive growth over the years. And it was a growth coming through organic channels, just opening new stores in new areas, but then ultimately through increased marketing and outreach digitally. So we anticipated dramatic growth, and therefore the platform itself had to be ready for dramatic traffic increases. So all layers of the physical infrastructure, for the most part, that was one of the places that I focused and then expanded and built that out. One, a little example of that is a content delivery network. Now, having been in overseeing digital channels for a long time, you might think in 2012, there was no content delivery network. That's kind of unusual.
Yeah, I think I was still one of the few people on Twitter still. Yeah,
and so it's a little interesting that ultimately, if you want a site to perform well, you really need to have a lot of your content out on the edge, being able to be served up in a really expeditious manner.
Right.
And so simple things like that, frankly, very low-hanging fruit that if you had, as I had overseeing digital channels previously, it's kind of here are the things that need to be there in order to really sustain dramatic growth. So infrastructure for sure, that, I focused a lot on that. The other thing that we did is we went through a complete site redesign and kind of transformation around 2012, 2013. Subsequently, Ulta did that again. But at that point in time, we specifically, one of the things that we knew was coming was mobile. Everybody was using mobile devices, less on the desktop. And so one of the things that we implemented was a mobile-first architecture. So a responsive web design, giving a nod to the fact that people were going to be on their phones. Most of the people were. And then we looked at the device base in the US This is changing and has changed over the years, but in the US, most people are on iPhones. We prioritized the different browsers. So we had a mobile first experience, an experience that could be adaptive to the type of mobile device that you were on. Believe it or not, people kind of were doing a little bit of shopping on small iPads, right? So we were really cognizant of the mobile formats. I think that was huge. And then, and then another thing is that, right, we began thinking about, like in 2013 is when we thought about native mobile and leveraging common components and functionality, but really thinking about devices where people were shopping and ensuring that whatever that experience is, it fit the type of format that they had in, like, either on their desk in their hand or something. So those would be a couple of the things that I think were, like, for sure helped propel the digital channel, is thinking about the infrastructure, of course, the experience, but, really the foresight that it should be mobile first. And then back end. That would be maybe the third area that really required a lot of focus, is fulfillment. Because at the time, kind of, believe it or not, a little history thing for Ulta, in 2012, the digital channel could only be fulfilled by a single physical warehouse. So that's not going to fly as
no, right. That's right.
Traffic increasing,
that won't
and you
scale.
want to push delivery closer to the guest. So opening up fulfillment to be able to fulfill from really the full footprint of the supply chain logistical capability was huge. And then, creating an omni-channel strategy where you could go into the store, have an extended kind of an endless aisle capability. If you didn't see it, it was something that was online, you could purchase, had to have you shipped to your store. So those would be the things that, again, just kind of keeping in mind time frame 2012, any longer, that seems like, right, it's kind of like a lifetime.
Right.
And those are the things that I think really helped,
Yeah, it does feel like in certain aspects a lifetime. Other ways it's like yesterday, but the world has changed. The consumer behavior has changed so much since then. And you're really at the early days for mobile back in the mid 2000s, right? 2012, 2015 even.
Right.
What was your approach in, like, building that experience when it wasn't at the level of volume we're looking at today? But it was more about, you'd had to get a lot of people on board to say, we're building for this. That we don't really know what it is. We just know that it's going to be the future and it's going to be big. I'd say that a lot of brands are probably, and a lot of leaders are having this conversation and struggle with agentic and AI right now too, right? Like, when is it too late? Well, you can say that it's never too late, but when is it like not too early, right?
Right.
You can get those experimental processes and operations to support you in that vision and where you feel the business is going. Because you also played a role in, like, community building before, like, we had this, like, massive social media presence and social community as well.
Right. So, a couple of things, right? One, I did mention, right, I'm a technologist. I love technology, but, I certainly have learned that you don't do tech for tech's sake, like applying technology strategically to really help it. You kind of see it as a strategic weapon. I like to think of it, and really applying it to advance your business. I'm a huge advocate for. I did found and lead an innovation team. So I love tech. I love to think about the future, how to, like, what's coming, what's applicable. I think the big thing I used to regularly say at Ulta is balancing risk reward. Yeah. If you're doing a small experiment and it's only affecting maybe the audience, because it's an experiment, is 5,000 customers, something like that, or you've filtered the experience right to a subset. It's not the millions that are coming to the digital channel or walking through every single store. It's a subset. Then the risk factor goes down because it's a smaller audience. It's not that there isn't risk there, but if you really hone in on what's the risk, what's the reward, you're going to do something quickly, figure it out, and then determine if it works, how large is the prize, and then go after it. I think kind of keeping that front and center, what's the risk? And again, minimizing risk where appropriate. Honestly, for me, it's like, what have you got to lose? but loss itself. So not trying these things just does not make, like for me, it doesn't make any sense. And so in 2012, like really in 2013, a lot of the conversation was, do you build a native app or like why build a native app? It was native app versus mobile web.
Yeah.
And I mean, things have moved so quickly. I don't know how many people remember M-Webs, right? Specific mobile sites, rather than what we implemented, responsive web design. But the native app at the time it was a bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
And we built the native apps. The approach was the basics, browse and shop initially. Previously, I kind of mentioned when we thought about mobile, we looked at what's our install base. We knew that people were on iPhones. We prioritized an iPhone, but we did build both an iOS and Android native app experience. We got the baseline out there, right? Prioritizing iOS, but then for sure having Android, because it makes it a lot easier to market to people if you don't have to tailor the communication. Even whatever the percentage is. I mean, at the time we were probably 90% iPhone, of the people within, but I don't think it was just unique to Ulta, but in the US, most people had an iPhone. That said, you don't want to send out a communication and then people on an Android device, it cuts them out. Yeah. So the strategy for sure was prioritize one, but make sure to build for both. And then ultimately what we did was oftentimes the native app would mirror what we were doing online, whatever we were doing online in desktop or mobile, we then would bring down to the native apps until eventually, the features, there was parity. I mean, this is kind of sad to say, but we used to call it we'd have initiatives for mobile app parity, making sure that they had the same rich capability. And then when we got to that point, we could pivot and take advantage of what's unique on the mobile device and constantly ask ourselves, what's unique on the mobile device? You have a camera, right? You have specific gestures that you can implement on the different environments that you're building for. So how do you then create experiences that are really sticky? They're only available on the native app. And eventually then you can drive, native or mobile app promotions only, so forth and so on. And the way to build up the downloads, is to leverage all of your channels, promote it in store, leverage the loyalty program, which we did to incentivize people, give them points if they download and use the native app. You kind of, again, talk to them in the physical store, talk to them in the digital channels. And then back in the day, a real simple thing, you still see it today, is, and then I'll pause, is if you were shopping on the brand site and you were in web, there's the little overlay up at the top that says, hey, would you like to get the app? Right. And back in 2013, 2014, that was actually like a strategy, right? Like now.
Right.
Through we can probably just have that auto-coded or something, but putting that up there and having that little banner so that you could really easily get people to use the app. And then the app, generally, I find most native apps to be the most expeditious way to, convert, right? The checkout is typically pretty seamless.
Right.
And, so there are advantages. And then, and candidly, for Ulta, when you look at the digital, the digital business itself, the native app contributes a huge amount to the overall sales of the digital channel. So it's just, so the message I would say once again is not that I'm right, adopt technology early, but in this instance, having a native app has been huge for the business because it contributes to, it's probably about half of the digital channels.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people would say, oh, there's not enough room on the phones. Nobody's going to download it.
Yeah, I remember those arguments.
Percentage, all these conversations. And I said, listen, any consumer of yours that's going to download the app has some type of relationship with you that you need to tap into, and you need to know who these people are. If you're important enough to make it onto the phone, and you make it, do you make it on the home screen? That is a relevant point of like a relationship point, that treat them in a different way, treat it as a segment. Anybody who goes to that level of brand affinity matters.
That's fair. And maybe another thing in fairness that perhaps worked, or one of the reasons it really is worked so well for Ulta, is because of because the customers are loyal. The loyalty program is such a huge component of Ulta's overall sales. Beauty customers are highly engaged. So having that and having something that is very efficient, very quick, obviously from the beginning, really long before I joined, the loyalty program has been front and center at all touch points. So it's a real loyal customer to begin with. Beauty customers they're highly engaged in social channels, right? They're really into the assortment. And so then having that combined with people that are really engaged in Ulta Beauty and that particular brand, the native app is kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, exactly.
And then it's, I think, really pushing to see, how do you make it different? Like, what's different about it? It has to be really useful, that, to your point, right, they're going to come back and they want to use it. And another little funny story is we did actually, something that did not work is we did actually build a tailored solution at the time for the iPad. Because our thought was, well, I mean, if you remember, there were you kind of even had to code specifically for some of these different devices. So we created this little interactive, almost like this drag and drop, like a collage builder of your favorite beauty things. And then the idea would be that you could post it and people could shop off of it. 2013, 2014, it didn't work. It might work now, but I mean, it didn't work at all. And then eventually it was too much development, right? Developing for all these different channels. And so we abandoned, right? We were like, okay, let's focus on the handheld that's in everybody's pocket, and we'll get rid of at least that development effort.
Yeah, I remember so many discussions in that era with retailers that always started with, okay, do we do an app or do we just stick to mobile web? And looking back, one of the things that always strikes me is everyone wanted to focus on where am I going to reach the majority? And the argument was always, well, if you focus it on mobile web, then that's accessible by everyone. I have to get people to download the app if I focus on the app. And then immediately that was always followed, well, how many retail apps are people really going to put on their phone? Maybe one or two in the places they shop the most. And I suppose at the time everyone was worried about how much space these things took up on your phone, because of course, like you said, the majority of them were iPhones, and everybody complained at the time, right, that the lower price points that Apple had didn't have enough storage on the phone. And in some ways that was an incentivized to get you to keep upgrading, right, to the next iPhone. But eventually though, I think what people learn to realize, it's actually not, you can get people to download an app because the actual process of downloading through an app store is so frictionless, it's easy. People will just do it to try something out, and then they probably will never delete it. It'll just sit there. Even if they don't use it, it'll sit there. So you don't need to focus as much, I would argue with folks at the time. It's less of a focus on getting them to take the app as much as what are they going to do with it once they have it. And then the discussion was always, well, do we focus on the most loyal customers who are going to be more inclined to engage, or are we using it as a way to incentivize people to create that loyalty? And is that are those like contradictory in the same app? I remember a lot of discussions of that sort too. And I remember even at the time, some retailers like Target had two mobile apps, one that was the loyalty program and one that was just for shopping in the app, until eventually they consolidated. But it was because of those arguments that said, we can't really serve both audiences in the same app.
It's interesting. You know, like another thing that that we did is along the way when I was in innovation is, in general, I think most customers are used to scanning a barcode. And at the time, right, we all had little barcode scanners we put on our phones. Right. And now open the camera. I mean, it's a lot easier. Yeah, exactly. But at one point we had this idea, we'll like an innovation, we'll bring the physical store to life. We're going to bring it to life, and we're going to do so by letting you just scan an image of a product. And we'll use AI, we'll use computer vision to recognize the product. And then it's going to be really so much easier than picking up the product and finding the barcode.
Right.
And it didn't work. It didn't work. And it didn't work. Maybe it'll work eventually, right? It didn't work because, one, how did they know they can just point their phone at something? Like the first thing that you realized is it wasn't about the technology. The technology.
How does the consumer know to do it?
Does the consumer know to do it? And then how do you train that behavior? How do you get them to actually not pick up the bottle or whatever, scan the barcode?
Right.
And then when you've got a lot of things packed on the shelf, right? If they're pointing their camera,
how close do they get?
Are they gonna, just the whole natural behavior of, even though people are used to using it to take pictures, it's not, it was a education process. We realized, oh, this is really about educating the customer.
Right.
This is capable and that you can use your phone to explore the world, if you will.
Right. Yeah.
And people were not, in general, they were younger demographic, kind of took to it a little bit more readily, I'll be honest. But in general, it was not a natural behavior for people at all.
Yeah. How do you decide to go in on those technologies? So things like, to your example, so things like AR, where you're in computer vision, or even now, right, with AI and agentic capabilities, or just any kind of XR with all these different multi-reality type solutions. How do you go through that process? As you lend innovation to those examples, how do you decide that now's the time to try this, not knowing if the consumer would know how to work with it?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, the innovation team, when I founded that and formed it, it sat in the business. So for the first time in my career, I did not, I did not report into technology, into the CIO. I reported into the digital business channel, and I really think that was a great decision.
Yeah.
And it made all the difference, because then some of the things that we ultimately wound up doing, acquiring companies, I don't think that would have happened had I been in technology. And so always centering it around the business objectives, like anything we did, our focus with innovation was customer. So we didn't look at innovation broadly, like automating the warehouse. Our focus, we were formed specifically to focus on the future of the customer experience, the future of retail, and what would be relevant for the customer and really more impactful an experience. So I know a lot of people say that, but ultimately grounding everything to not just the customer, but knowing the business objectives, knowing that personalization, people had talked about forever, and understanding that was really something that, we wanted to really make significant progress on. The advancements in AI around 2018, right? 2017, 2018, because AI has been around forever, but a lot of it's just changed. It was great. We focused on things that we knew were going to make a difference for the business and be aligned to business objectives. We kind of eventually came up with a little bit of a prioritization process where we would evaluate all the initiatives based on the value to the business, what was its ability to impact revenue, sales, et cetera. So business growth drivers, we would evaluate each initiative based on that. And then we would also always make sure that we had some blend of experimentation, minimally 10, 15%, something that was a little out there. People weren't looking at it yet. And we would note, is it going to two things? Do we think it can create a competitive advantage? We've got it. Our competitors don't. We're ahead.
Right.
And although maybe a smaller component, was it talk? What was the talk value? Was it talk worthy? Was there a PR value?
Yeah.
And I would argue that I think some of the, some of the PR or the awards, if you will, but the acknowledgement that we received, most innovative company. And this goes back 2018, kind of on the cusp of that. Some of the things that I'd been doing in my old role, in virtual try-on and bringing it forward and advancing it through innovation. I think that being seen as leveraging technology well, I think that benefits a company. It might benefit certain demographics, right? Maybe, again, changing demographics, but I think just getting exposure and, in other words, increasing your brand awareness, right? So we did look at, there's no doubt if you're going to do something and it's cool new technology and it has an immediate near-term business, benefit aligned to objectives, we had a portion of the work that we did that was connected in that way. But then there were other things that were bets. Some worked, some didn't. But in the end, what we did is we educated and we learned and through that technical muscle for the company that ultimately wound up being really a huge advantage.
Can you share an example of how like gamification or experiences like Glam Lab like helped reshape that engagement? And really digging into what that taught you about like the budgets and that prioritization. At this point, you're creating new KPIs.
Fair. And it's interesting you say that because I feel like we'll take virtual try-on Glam Lab. We implemented virtual try-on in 2016. So in my old role, we implemented a virtual try-on experience, light usage, but it was cool. And it was something that was unique to the native app at the time. Eventually, we migrated that capability to mobile web or to the web and using the camera in a browser, which is a little bit more complicated. But with gamification or something like virtual try-on, one of the things is that we really expanded it. Like what you can do specifically in beauty for virtual try-on is it's very, it's something where people want to sample, they want to try things on, they want to swatch things. So, virtually, if you're doing that and getting a good idea of a color and what looks good on you or not, or what you like and favor, you can try on way more shades, way more efficiently than swatching your arm and then cleaning it up, right, as an example, or take the little Q-tip and apply it to your lips or something, right? So and then suddenly, like one thing that we recognized is that a KPI was number of shades tried on. And the more shades tried on, right, the more that people then are really maybe zeroing in on something that they think is really going to work for them. So the conversion factor was much higher. But even rather than focusing on the fact that, yes, conversion is going to be 3 times better if they've gone through a virtual try-on experience, is we would regularly publicly report on shades tried on because it's a level of engagement. They're more engaged in that type of an experience. They're spending a little bit of a longer time playing. And once again, the assortment is playful. I think that ultimately Glam Lab was initially a fun tool that served a purpose for people to really hone in on, try a lot of different things, find something that they liked and buy it. And then again, like with anything, which I feel like is so true in the startup world, a little bit of luck. Frankly, COVID, we saw in innovation as an opportunity because Glam Lab, a bit of a stepchild of an experience, in order to get all your products into an experience like that, they have to be calibrated.
Yeah.
Look on all the different skin tones. So there's a physical component of that. And like at the time COVID hit, we probably had about 30% of our color cosmetics assortment available to be tried on. And when COVID hit, we were like, okay, great. Can we use a lot of the beauty, like the beauty associates in the store who are now at home? Can we leverage them?
Yeah.
And what was great about that is suddenly during that time frame, we were able to calibrate all products. We got all color cosmetics into the application. People were sitting at home, customers. Suddenly, they're still able to sample and experiment with beauty at home. Once again, hey, we put something into the app that was fun, that was ahead of its time. It became super useful in a period of time where stores were closed, and when they opened in beauty, sampling still wasn't available. And then it actually became a tool that we were able to use in the physical store as well. And where the beauty advisor in the store was using it to help with shade matching. And then the moment that occurred, they became almost disciples of Glam Lab, and they promoted it because they felt like, hey, they helped calibrate product. They had a stake.
They were part of it, right? They were part of the process now.
They were a part of the process.
Development,
So that there were different the conversion was still there for something like that. Again, everybody wants to know what's its value, et cetera. But I would say level of engagement and the metric of shades tried on became something that we regularly reported on and we tracked. We would track our progress on keeping current with items like assortment that was calibrated, ready to be tried on, and ensure that there was always that if we were bringing a new brand online as a part of the setup process, Yes, it was set up to go to a physical store and be purchased online, but it was also ready to be tried on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's coming from the startup world myself in like the retail tech space. There is this, when people ask, oh, well, how much value does it bring? It's, well, every single minute that I'm away doing this, just add that to the calculator because I'm seeing value. It may not be quantifiable yet because retail is just legacies move slow. Funding in retail space has been a graveyard for decades, right? We do have a graveyard behind us of retail tech because of the legacy systems that you have to integrate with, the heavy lift it takes to support one brand that it's, oh, well, it's only one brand, but I'm like, they're doing over $1 billion. Give me a break. How much are you really supposed to be able to bootstrap here? And you've led digital transformations and full supply chain transformation inside legacy organizations, and now advise startups on building that future for retail. And I always say it's a longer road than you're going to expect, and a lot of stuff's just not going to make sense. You're going to see that founders see the vision, but there's a part of your soul will die along the way when you just see so many challenges and roadblocks and barriers that just don't make business sense. What are some of the most common barriers of innovation do you see? And how can leaders overcome them to future-proof their business on, one, on the startup side to stay alive, and two, on the organizations that these founders are killing themselves for, to accept them, to bring them in, to partner with them, to co-build, to embrace this ecosystem of, I feel most of the founders I meet in retail tech, like they're SMEs. They're not random.
Right.
They've been in corporate. They've led, they had careers, and they found something that they wanted to dig their heels into.
Yeah. And, and it's interesting because looking back, as far as like this role of founding an innovation team, and so many people, startups along the way, and founders, entrepreneurs that would say, this is really unique. And the way that this has been set up and being managed is just, this is unique. This is a differentiator for Ulta Beauty. I do think that, once again, kind of looking back and recognizing that we had an innovation team, and if you kind of read like, well, who's right for an innovation team? Who are the right people to be in innovation? And the reality of it is that it is the people that are the most curious. And the most curious, just questioning, figuring things out. It's not necessarily about, bring the heaviest tech person in. Certainly some of that. There's no doubt about the fact of leveraging it. Maybe even, again, understanding algorithms and whatnot. You have to have an engineering strength there and build that. But I do think that just the curiosity and the fact that that was my approach, if you will, lent itself to being open to startups and giving them a chance and recognizing that you can actually do so much with so little. And now trying to help startups break through, because you're describing it completely right. Like, now here I am. It's like, oh, great. I'm going to go like help startups and help them get recognized and help them get into large companies. It isn't easy. And there still is, particularly with the larger companies, there still is a leaning towards large names, tried and true, commercial off the shelf, if you will, and a preponderance to like spend a lot of money, which just, it drives me crazy. Instead of the millions, you can actually spend nothing near that, and you wind up with a greater solution. Then the concern goes back to this risk versus reward. Well, what if it doesn't work? Well, no one's suggesting that it's your mission critical application. You're going to validate it first. You're going to see if it works. And then you're going to gauge, the level of where are people at the adoption and move into it. A little bit of common sense along the way. So I think it's like the way to get in. I do really advocate for having a strategic. I know some founders, entrepreneurs, they're worried a little bit that depending upon that relationship, maybe it'll be too overbearing. Certainly, then that's not your right strategic. Others maybe worry that if they pick a particular brand, other brands are cut out.
Yeah.
Right.
And so one of the approaches that we took was to make sure that we actually redid some of our contracts to fit innovation, so that what we would do is maybe we would ask you for a little bit of a head start, give us a couple of years. Then if you want to go to whoever, go for it. Because at the end of the day, you want them to be successful. They're maybe running something that is meaningful and making a meaningful difference in the business, in contributing to business value. So why not let them flourish? And I will tell you, although once again, I think unique, that if you're really going to make a commitment to the startup, having an investment in them, albeit minor, it kind of even makes the enterprise, if you will, feel a little bit more committed to the success of the relationship.
Yeah.
And I don't suggest that that's going to be possible for everyone, but I do think that kind of in thinking about chatting today, one of my thoughts was that what if you give it a try? You're doing an experiment for really not a lot of money. What in the world have people got to lose, particularly when technology is moving so quickly?
Right.
I honestly, my thought on it is that, obviously look for companies that are going to embrace technology. Probably smaller companies are going to be more nimble and able to do that for sure.
Right.
But then really continuing to try and advocate for try it.
Yeah. In most cases, trying a solution with a startup is less than an ad budget behind one Instagram post for the month.
Yeah.
The startups aren't asking for millions of dollars.
Why not try it at that point?
They're asking for $50,000.
And then I think the secret, we kind of honestly grew into this, is that, and when it really needs to be bounded. Whatever the experiment is, should be bounded. Don't spend a lot if you're unsure, because like I say, we were doing initiatives where we had technical capabilities that the company didn't yet have because we came through acquisitions. We built out the solution, the personalization platform. We built a lot of capabilities that contributed significantly to the company. All of the recommendations and things using current day AI, et cetera, was done. That said, these experiments need to be quick, get in, get out. If they work, they did. But if they work, I think a secret too is that if they work, then you really need to partner with the enterprise, partner with what would have been my teams in IT.
Yeah.
At that point in time, begin to think about how do you bring the enterprise in, it's working. And then at that point, you kind of finalize where you're going to go, the roadmap with it. And then it's really completely transitioning it to the enterprise to carry it forward. And there's much more buy-in, staying power with an experiment like that than oftentimes we build something. We had the technical expertise, and then it stayed in innovation. And then that comes with a whole nother set of challenges, right? Where suddenly you're beginning to turn into, you're supporting what you're building, and you look along with the rest of the companies.
Yeah, it's kind of a shift for a lot of brands when you're used to working with those larger tech providers where you're just being given a solution and then you're just kind of focused on implementing, versus the opportunity with a startup, just as you've been describing, you're co-building the solution with the startup. You're truly partnering with them. It's almost like a two-way feedback in how you're going to deploy that. And the point you made about even just a small investment in the startup to really have some teeth in it, in a sense, or have some skin in that, and actually and
see it as educational, you know?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, most of the founders, entrepreneurs that I know really are on the leading edge.
Yeah.
You've got a lot to learn.
They're looking forward. It's about looking forward at what you can do. So on that track of looking forward, and one of the things that we talked about before that we touched on is some of the things like around, you've said in other areas too, about how search as we know it is really changing, and almost the old way of thinking of search is becoming obsolete. And to that effect, right, that means e-commerce platforms in general have to evolve along with that. So if you're looking forward and you were thinking in terms of what's the future of retail innovation, is there something that look at that you think it's, whether it's a technology or a capability that's not getting enough attention yet?
Well, I was like, wait, maybe, you guys go first. You guys go first now, because I'm sure you have a point of view on this as well. You guys know quite a bit. The thing that really I kept testing, like maybe even too much, was video, live shopping.
Yeah. Yep. And we've talked about that a lot
Even though, I
ourselves.
mean, it's like TikTok,
Yeah.
TikTok works,
Mm-hmm.
right? But then brands are going over to TikTok. It's really another advertising channel, right? And I think recognizing this almost organic growth of sellers, of creators, influencers,
Mm-hmm.
and recognizing that the people are listening to them, or they're listening to people like them. They're also listening to the celebrities, right? I think video will have its day. I mean, I think at the Consumer Electronics Show this year, they said somewhere like that 2026 was going to be the year for video.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that video isn't here. It is here. Video's here, and everybody's using creators and influencers. But when does it really become more of an interactive commerce experience where they're not just going to TikTok, following things, or YouTube or whatever, but the experience itself is much more three-dimensional. It's much more interactive. And that is the way that you're shopping.
Mm-hmm.
I am right there with you. I believe in shoppable TV. And I don't want a link. I don't want a QR code. I want all product placement.
You want a buy button.
Shoppable.
Right.
I don't even want a buy button. There's cooler stuff out there. I've seen startups with cooler stuff out there. I've seen amazing startups in shoppable television die.
Yeah.
And, I think there is this huge disconnect between supply chain technology and media.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah.
Right in there on order processing, digital OMSs, returns, loyalty, all these components to retailing that need to be embedded, not a shortcut, not a little URL, not a hyperlink, not affiliate link, not a QR code. I want the real work to be done. And I feel that agentic commerce is going to get that work done. And I think it's going to help media more than agentic commerce on my prediction. I think the value of whatever's going to be built for agentic, I think it's what we've been waiting to be built on the other side.
Right.
Because Sex and the City should have been shoppable. Ghost Whisperers should have been shoppable, like back in the day. Suits should have been shoppable.
Right.
Millions should be shoppable. Like
generating your own videos. I hate to say it, that, but at the end of the day, I mean, that is the case. It's becoming more and more powerful. And once again, not to take away from humans, creators, et cetera. Not at all. That I think that have your likeliness now drive the beauty hall. Not necessarily that, although that's obviously coming, right? Yeah. But I think just a different way of experiencing and learning. Well, it's already happening. Yeah. Right. If for whatever reason, brand sites haven't really figured out how to kind of transform an experience where people are like, wow, this is really fun. This is exciting. There's probably some element of a different form of a reward, some little, back to your original, kind of the conversation about gamification. There's a code to be cracked on how does video in the US, right? Maybe other places as well, really become like the front door of your experience and become this totally new way to engage and fun to shop. And I think a part of it is there is an the interactivity component. You got to light up the community because today I'm just hanging out on an Amazon website or Ulta or whatever, looking at product. I'm not really bringing my friends along like I might into the physical store. So there are, and you can do that in video, but it's still really, right? It's little comments floating by on the screen.
Yeah, I'm like, come on, you guys. I'm like, we can be so much better than this. But
because video, I think, is good. And
even though, like, it's, I don't know, Suits, there is a professional wardrober behind it that gets paid that could be monetizing and ranking on how they're like how much product they're actually moving beyond like an influencer on a different channel. They are professional like wardrobers. They know their product. They're setting the trends. Right. They're dressing these people, right? And I see it as another monetization strategy, even if it's like attached to their, legacy career, you could say, right?
Right.
I'm curious. You're in the startup world, right? You and obviously, Ricardo, you've seen a lot of stuff. From anything that I know, kind of spending a little bit of time in Silicon Valley, like no one's abandoned heads-up displays. And I think that's another thing. No one's abandoned that. Intelligent eyewear, is they're continuing to just advance and make that better and better. And I do think too, like earlier we were talking, does everyone know how to they hold up their phone? No one's going to do that, right?
Yeah.
So potentially some way through a heads up display to get information. Like, I think that's real. I don't know necessarily, right? Is that the way I'm going to be shopping? I still find sometimes that's kind of like it's in my path of vision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was always saying I'm never going to wear glasses. Like, why would I ever put glasses on? Then, I don't know. I turned like 40 something and I woke up one day and I'm like, oh my God, now I have to wear glasses. So I guess, we all end up having to wear glasses anyway.
One way or another. So now if there's a way that actually they become, again, I think there's no doubt that heads up displays, like, and that type of once again, like interactivity and being able to create that on that medium rather than something in your hand and you're distracted. And
well, and because at the end of the day, right, even just the phone, just holding something is a distraction, right? So it adds some friction to whatever it is. And I think you're right. In my mind, a lot of the AR capabilities you see that can be done in a phone, it's almost just part of the educational process to get used to the idea of doing this, but not necessarily the modality in which you're going to do it down the road. Because walking around holding a phone in front of you seems a little awkward to me.
Right.
I don't think
battery
will do that.
On the battery. Like,
and battery,
yeah. If you keep the battery all day, then I'm not using AR. Because like my battery is more important than anything you can show me.
Yeah, and that's the challenge because that takes a lot of battery power. And if you want it to be a heads up, hands free, you have very little places to put a battery at that point, right? So there is a technological challenge there to be done. But I think they're all like step functions that kind of help slowly but surely train consumers along the path to say, here's something you could be doing, and it's going to get more and more interesting. But I agree with you too that I think video is probably one of those steps to go through.
Yeah.
I think if we think of all the sci-fi shows and movies we've seen, it's when we get to the point where everything can be done as a holographic image in front of you, or you just like hold it to your palm out and you just see a little hologram of what you're looking at and you can interact with it. That's probably the end goal that you want to get to. Yeah, and I'm sure there are technological steps to get us there. But
we're coming to 2026 and like every woman across the globe is still waiting for the clueless closet. I don't know how many of them we've invented, but we still haven't got there yet. So we've talked about some cool stuff, the challenges, the risks, the rewards. Anything you think is just not up to the hype, that's just really too height focused?
I guess, I'd probably say, I don't want to say, there's a lot of hype. I don't want to say agentic AI, but I did. And it's not to say that I think there's hype. Well, there's hype, right? People almost feel like we were looking at Gen AI, and the next thing you know, it immediately got replaced with agentic AI.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right. What happened to generative AI? Well, it's still there, right?
Yeah.
It's behind agentic. And I think there is a sense of urgency. Okay. I think if people aren't really immersed in AI and leveraging AI with its current capabilities, start quickly, get going there. You really need to, and you need to be educated. And I think a really key component that people are missing is rather than build the tech. So many people in my network now, there really is beginning to be this understanding that it's educate your people.
Yeah.
Like, the workforce and getting people to really, whether they're using them to your point for everyday tasks, but understanding how to use them, understanding how to really create the right prompts, I think is important. So I think the hype, it's like if we could break down the barrier and really have it be, here's a practical application of this. This is what you need to be doing. Like, number one, make sure that there is a plan, not the credenzaware change management plan, but like, how do people actually learn? Where's the time for them to learn and understand how to use some of these tools, how to apply them? So there is definitely a lot of hype around, like, again, some of the newer technologies, and I just feel like it's not so much like get on the technology, build something, build an agent, and more about what is the right, like, do some experimentation, bring people along, and for sure do something, but don't get really, I guess, distracted by the fact that it's like you need to quickly spend a lot of money, implement agents all over the place, or something like that. And then I kind of feel like kind of a minor thing, right, is that maybe we can be done with, I don't know, you guys are in retail, but like digital mirrors? No. I'm all about like interactive displays of some type, but once again,
I want it in my home. I'm not interested in it in the store.
Honestly, one of the things that we said very early on in innovation is we used to have this another little saying, own the home.
Yeah, like I was a big proponent of like Oak Labs, and I was like literally getting I'm like, I don't want it for B2B. I literally want to sell these integrated into my customers' homes.
Yeah.
This is going in their closet.
I would completely agree with you that that's where it would belong unintrusively, because everyone's like a mirror in your bathroom. Hold on, like unobtrusively, manufacturers that are making them, they're best at doing that. And then there's some sort of an open interface where we're just like, your automobile, like CarPlay, where we're writing into it.
Exactly.
I'm totally with you. But the big mirrors and holographic displays, they create buzz, particularly holographic displays, but a lot of that stuff in the physical store, I think that's probably hype.
Yeah.
Sorry for all the, like the folks out there that maybe you're in that business, but but I'm with you that in your home.
Hey, drop a comment and hang in and stand on that soapbox. That's why we're having these conversations.
That's right. Well, and it's about, it's about having those technologies where they're actually going to generate a new capability, something that you couldn't do before. And I think maybe that's what it comes down to. If you're putting that in the store, well, you're really doing something new that you couldn't already do more easily. With less technology or a different technology. It's a tough one,
Fair enough, which leads you then to the thing that, again, it's like I'm a big fan of private AI. The concept of private AI totally is the word. Public AI is great.
Are you a big fan of Black Mirror? Have you seen a few episodes of Black Mirror?
No, I haven't.
Okay. It's like the Twilight Zone, but for tech. So every episode is completely not associated with the previous episode.
Okay.
You should dig into some Black Mirror episodes. I think they're great.
Wow.
One of them was that you got a little mini you, and you essentially had to beat it into submission and abuse it until it would like mind you, because it didn't understand that it was a mini you. And it was like, I don't know, 2 inches tall. And it had its own little house that sat on the counter, and it made your coffee in the morning, and it managed your calendar, and it like...
Wow.
It managed your whole life. And it was a little mini clone of you that was like, I don't know, the size of a Rice Krispie treat, dude. Or a Rice Krispie treat, right?
Easy enough to bring along. Pop in your pocket.
Pocket, right?
Yeah, your bag, whatever, the backpack, there it is.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm down with AI being one of those. Like my little mini me that is just for me. Nobody else really has access. You can control the APIs that are coming into your calendar or to your Spotify or to all these different things. And you just have something that is able to start anticipating your needs.
Right.
And clearing the road, like just clear my path through the day so I can find more enjoyment.
And if you were able to do things like whatever, scan your closet, tries to, I don't know, but I mean, let's say you're getting ready and you are, again, kind of virtual try-on in your own space. And again, with something that is resonant on the device, it's not like it's somehow people are watching you, right? But that it's there you are and you're trying on different things there and maybe figuring out that, gee, I like a little bit of a deeper shade of lipstick, easily buy it. Things of that is the right, like that's the right implementation for it. I don't disagree. Where the mirror really is best used rather than you're in the general public and,
I don't want to do that stuff in like public. Sometimes it's just like,
there is a thing called vanity. There is that thing.
That's right.
There's like, it's a privacy thing. It's a rush thing. It's you're interrupting my shopping experience versus they're two. I feel like they're different experiences. It's so things you do at home versus things you do when you're out shopping in the store and like why you went to the store or your purpose driven or your time constraints. It's a little bit different when you're at home and trying to procrastinate from doing the dishes.
Exactly.
Or in the middle of a seasonal closet flip.
Right.
It takes like 3-4 days.
Yep.
You've been recognized, and we can talk to you. I can just talk to you forever.
This is fun.
Yeah, don't unexpect an email. You've been recognized with awards from Commerce Next, Brand Innovators, Glossy, Vendors and Partnerships. What do those recognitions really mean to you personally? And how do they reflect the broader shifts happening in retail innovation?
So for me personally, I'm so proud to really be recognized like externally. From internally, right? We seek obviously like validations and promotions and things like that, right? And then that's the way we get validation is you continue to grow in your career one way or another, by whatever form that is, whatever form of compensation and promotion, monetarily, some other type of comp, right? But I think the external recognition for me, it is a validation that you've made an impact. People externally have recognized you. And I think candidly, probably one of the highlight of my career was to be recognized by partners, third-party vendor, right? Let's get rid of that word. But like by partners, by third-party partners, like really recognized by them. Not maybe, where I'm going with this, not promoted, that type of thing, but kind of in the blind that people are going to put you forward for recognition because of the way that you engage in doing business. Like I'd like to think that that reflects my level of integrity, honestly, and the fact that I really do believe in an approach with partners that aren't a part of your internal organization. The more of a relationship you have with them, right, the more you're going to achieve together.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so the Vendors in Partnership Award particularly was kind of a huge moment in my career, being recognized by the retail community, by people that are well-known, well-respected. It's kind of, wow, we made it on their radar of doing something that was an approach of how to conduct business in a really rich, kind of two-way, give and take manner that kind of stands out and makes a difference.
Yeah.
So I think it's just it's like, wow, okay, you kind of, indeed, people recognized you. And in many ways, I was like, I went from being a CIO, right, then kind of went over to help at Ulta grow their digital channel, kind of back to the level of VP. Sometimes I wondered, do I really should I go back to try and aspire to be a CIO? And at least for me, I recognized along the way that there was just so much more in it than that. And particularly trying to grow people, grow your teams. But if you can somehow then externally make an impact with a startup as an example, right? And then be recognized for that it's, like I say, a highlight of my career.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So keeping in that line, if there's one mindset shift that you would say to any retailers listening or watching today that would really help them drive meaningful transformation in their organization, much like what you've been able to do in your career, what would that one mindset shift be?
Yeah, I really can't impress enough embracing the future. I really guarantee people it's not like it's this huge cost driver. The value of embracing something earlier, you don't need to be the complete early adopter, right? But embracing something to learn, to educate, balancing risk reward, it pays off. It pays off. I feel like, what have you got to lose? But ultimately, right, loss itself, kind of being out of the game. And I like to look back even like, well, what was the value of innovation at Ulta? Well, ultimately, a good chunk of the innovation team became the company's AI center of excellence. And had Ulta not taken that leap of faith and said, okay, we're going to let this group of people continue to learn about the future, the company wouldn't have kind of the internal engineering capability. And not that people aren't going to continue to partner with third parties, you are, but to have that own in-house awareness and understanding, and even how to better partner with people because you have like innate in-house capability, was huge. So absolutely, people, they really need to embrace the future and figure out an experimentation mindset quickly. Don't do it too long. If it's not working, abandon ship.
Right.
But I just am like, I really don't understand why not. I just don't. I mean, I think that it really can be done cost effectively, and you've really have only everything to gain and nothing to lose.
Yeah. I think that's an important takeaway. Thank you for sharing your journey, your experience with us today, your insights to drive innovation. I think our audience can take a lot of perspective from that and take something into the office and look at really deploying some practical structure. I think that there's a huge opportunity with innovation startups and bringing those together. So thank you for leaving corporate behind and focusing on startups, on getting them clients and funded.
Right.
We need more. We need people like you that have the experience, the know-how, and the conviction. I think that's the biggest thing that lacks in the ecosystem is conviction.
Yeah.
The founders have it. Unfortunately, we need more people that have conviction that can't be fired. And that have the experience at that C-suite level, that have turned ships to give peace of mind and to be that advocate that it's okay. We're going to try it. I've done it a zillion times with giants bigger than you or like yourself. And that presence is really important. And so thank you for being in that space. For me and all the rest of the retail tech founders out there and beauty founders. Absolute pleasure, Michelle. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. This has been a delight. Yeah. Real delight. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. We so appreciate you spending the time with us today. I think we could probably go on for hours in this conversation and still learn even more from your experiences. For anyone in our audience listening and watching, if they want to reach out to you after this episode, particularly any startup founders, to Casey's point, what's the best way for them to do that?
You know what? They can drop me an email. It's a little bit of a lengthy one, but or reach out to me on LinkedIn, please. That's probably the easiest way, right? Just drop me a note. Look for me on LinkedIn. Drop me a note. I would be delighted to help the cause. There's nothing more infectious than being around entrepreneurs and founders with the level of optimism is just, I find it so energizing, right? The positivity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is great. So I'd be delighted to connect with whoever I can help.
Yeah, fantastic.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Well, with that, guys, I'd say that this episode is a wrap. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider giving us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Good Pods. Don't forget to hit subscribe on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube so you never miss an episode. And tell a friend or anyone you think would really appreciate our show. I'm Casey Golden.
And we love to hear from you, so please follow us at Retail Razor on LinkedIn, Blue Sky, Threads, and Instagram. If you'd like to see highlights from each episode in your email inbox, subscribe to our Substack newsletter and visit retailrazor.com for transcripts and more details about our guests. Retail Transformers is part of the Retail Razor Podcast Network, the #1 indie podcast network for retail. I'm Ricardo Belmar.
Thanks for joining us.
Until next time, stay sharp, be bold, and transform retail. This is the Retail Razor Retail Transformers.